We have a couple attendees still connecting to audio, so I will wait just a second. There we go. All right. Welcome, everyone. This is another in our series of educational webinars. Today, we have with us a couple of experts from Five Nines. We have James Bowen and Blaine. They're going to talk to us a little bit about cybersecurity in healthcare. So looking forward to hearing what they have to say. If you have questions, please put them in the chat, and I will be happy to stack them up, and we will get to them when we get a time for question and answer. James and Blaine, you want to take it from here?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to speak about this stuff. It's pretty important, and it's been important for a while, but ever since goodness, the last 3 or 4 years and the pandemic and all the changes in how people are operating and things that have taken place, it's more important than ever, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. So we have a variety of things we'd like to talk about that hopefully can just be top of mind for all you as you're looking at building budgets for next year and prioritizing them, or maybe even convincing other people that we should start spending some money in this direction. So I'm James Bowen, founder of Five Nines. Then we have Blaine Kale on with us, and director of engineering, but he heads up our security tools and efforts and things like that as well. So I'll just get started. Thank you very much for being here. We do want your questions. We'll have a time after this for them, but if you have questions as we go, and Andrew, it looks like it's relevant at the moment, just stop us and we'll tackle it in stride. So top cybersecurity challenges in healthcare at present. Or these are ones that we all should be talking about. Some of these are going to be really obvious to you, but they still matter, and some might be something that's worth thinking about. Blaine, I'm going to have you run with this for a moment.
Yeah. So first, I want to hit the headline here real quick. While we will have a few things in here that are specific to healthcare, one thing I see commonly is people saying or researching, which industries are being targeted, kind of as an excuse to not spend money, or as to not not be interested, right? It's like, oh, they're just going after financial. They're going, everybody's being hit. The attackers don't care. They're financially motivated. They will take money wherever they can get it. So, but there are a few things I think that are kind of unique technical challenges that show up in healthcare that may not show up in some other industries. So we've got some bullet points for that. So on the first one, phishing. I think the latest Verizon data breach incident report that they put out annually, which is very good, still says that over 2/3 of all security incidents start with a human doing something, not like a direct hack against infrastructure. So whether that's phishing or malware in your email, the human behavioral component is still pretty important. I've seen some prominent people say that security awareness training isn't delivering the value that it should, and I strongly disagree, because while it can't be perfect, humans are often a first line of defense here, and therefore, I mean, security awareness training is quite affordable. It's one of those things, it's like continuing education, right? Everybody's got to be vigilant at all times. Mm-hmm. Five Nines has a set of what you might call core values, and one of others is healthy paranoia, right? You just need to be not paranoid, but a healthy level of paranoid at all times. So watch out for phishing. Email account compromise also can be called BEC, business email compromise. We see this extremely frequently. It is a common entry point, not just for gaining further access to the network, but maybe just they want to send some spam, or very frequently these days, they're going to use the contents of an inbox to defraud other organizations. They're going to look for invoices and letterheads and people that you've worked with previously and impersonate you to those other organizations to get them to, maybe wire a payment that's expected to the wrong place. Not surprising, the use of multi-factor authentication goes a huge way towards preventing this, and we still don't see universal adoption of multi-factor authentication in email, but it really needs to be.
Yeah, we'll have a real case of this that came out during the pandemic as an example after we're done with this slide. And as Blaine was just saying, it is unfortunate because this is a relatively simple and affordable security issue to avoid, as long as people are willing to adopt it and accept a mild amount of inconvenience.
Yeah, and one thing specific to healthcare in this regard, is if you have the threat actor who gets into your mailbox, you may have a regulatory disclosable incident because they may have been able to get access to PHI, right?
Mhm.
So I see a little bit of too much of a laissez-faire attitude towards email when these days email is data security. It's not just communication between people. So if somebody gets into one of your mailboxes, you might need to be invoking your cyber insurance policy, paying a 5 or 6 figure deductible and getting forensics involved. So just rather not have that happen.
Mhm.
Ransomware is always present, or if we want to think of extortion in general, these days they may not actually try to ransom the systems themselves because it's a very noisy technical operation. They may just steal your data and hold it hostage, try to get you to pay them to not release it. Even if you pay them, they're going to release it anyway. So never pay. But they might do double extortion. They might encrypt your data to disrupt your operations, and they might also threaten to resell your data. This is one of those healthcare specific things. I see legacy systems that are prohibitively expensive to upgrade or literally can't be upgraded in healthcare, and I see it a lot in manufacturing. So while they are not frequently the initial entry point for an attack, especially since people aren't like sitting on them, doing email, browsing the web, etc. They present a very attractive target for an attacker to move to once they're inside your network to hide.
Okay.
Oftentimes, these things do not have your security tooling on them because it's not supported, right? So your eyes are not as broad. So we're gonna need to see more segmentation of things in your environment. Um, you're gonna have categories of stuff that just really needs to be isolated away from the rest of your general IT. These flat networks of old are no longer sustainable. And segmentation of networks for security purposes has been a mantra for a long time. It's difficult to do. It's not cheap. It can be problematic technically, but we're seeing the actual pure security need to do it get broader.
Yeah, when facilities, and this has been going on for ever since EHR started getting heavily adopted, what, 17, 18 years ago. When facilities go from one EMR product or an EHR product to another one, and sometimes this is forced because there's merger and acquisition in the healthcare software space all the time. Every month, some product is, somebody's buying up something else. Maybe eventually McKesson owns everything, but you have that. So you end up being forced at some point, or you desire to move to a new and different system. Most places don't spend the money on migrating all of their data from the old system to the new one, or sometimes it's just not very feasible to do so. So you end up living with the old system as long as you legally have to, which is usually way outlasting the version of Windows that's on that system or the hardware that's on it. So because of virtualization, people can virtualize these old servers that they might have had in the past and keep them around longer, but that's not good enough from a security perspective. These old systems are easy targets, and they usually are kept around because they have relevant healthcare information in them that people still might need to use as an archive. And so it's really really problematic from protecting from breaches and things like that. Medical billing systems are common for this too, right? If you go to a new medical billing provider or something like that, you usually start from scratch in that system, and you keep the old system around until all of those billings are fully exhausted. And sometimes that takes 6 months to a year or more that people are working through those old systems, and they're not getting the attention of the new ones. So the reason we're bringing this up here is if you're a healthcare institution, you've been around for a while, chances are this already exists in your department, and your IT team is going to need to have the resources necessary to provide their own level of security for these, because you're not going to be able to just install all the software and patch them in the way that you can on the current system.
Yeah, and it's not just the Windows level either. You know, if you're running an end of life version of Windows, it's kind of an automatic failure from an audit standpoint. But you'll find your other security tooling stop supporting those old versions. You know, your antivirus vendor might say, "Yeah, we don't work with 2008 anymore because it's been dead for 10 years." Yeah. So you do have to worry about more than just Windows patches.
Which leads into the fragmented security architecture in general in healthcare. There are a variety of different security systems in place, and a lot of third parties involved that might be providing some element of their own, because there's so many different things that are involved in within a critical access hospital, something like that.
Yep. And not only is fragmentation a problem from a security perspective, but it creates a substantial amount of administrative overhead too. Every exception from the norm, every outlier represents a substantial dollar investment in people and tooling in order to keep that alive. So unifying everything as much as possible is good business sense and good security sense.
I like the
mandating best practices. James, I know you want this one. Go for it.
it's difficult. I mean, there's a lot of things in healthcare that you can sort of say, yeah, that physicians are difficult to work with at times, because their convenience and speed for a physician directly correlates with, patient efficiency, patient care, the financial well-being of the organization that they're within. And so, getting a physician to start to adjust their best practices, or to mandate some best practices, changing passwords is really difficult. Oftentimes, there's some single sign-on systems where the physician might even have single sign-on between multiple institutions that the physician's traveling between, or they might be using the same security ID card that's going from one institution to another. That's pretty common. It's really difficult to change workflows in an already complex environment where people are interacting with each other from different organizations. So it's, even if, let's say you're a surgery center and your physicians are coming in and the anesthesiologists are coming in from the outside, typically, how do you even train them on the new best practices that you're trying to mandate? How do you put those things together? This is not something more that we're trying to tell you how to solve it. We're trying to point it out that it's really difficult and it matters, so that people can be putting some time into thinking about, well, which best practices to prioritize, how to communicate them, who are all the stakeholders that we need to be communicating to around the adjustment of a best practice. It's even difficult right now to get, I hate to blame physicians because we all need them and we all love physicians, right? But there's a lot of places that we work with where the physicians still use their personal Gmail accounts. So even when you're putting encryption in email and you're putting all this governance around the business systems, if the physician is allowed to continue to receive forwards of emails and potential patient information and everything to their Gmail account, ultimately, then their own personal phone, if they're not securing that properly or they don't have a PIN code on it, becomes a a potential breach location if the phone is lost. All sorts of things like that. Blaine, what do you want
Also
to add?
becomes a liability nightmare, right?
Yeah.
A lot of security thought happens after the incident. Think about it beforehand. If you start arguing with your insurance provider about paying out on a policy and you said, well, yes, we knew that the radiologist was receiving PHI to their Gmail account and we didn't do anything about it, you might not have a policy coverage, you know? So a lack of a little of administrative discipline might result in 6, 7, 8-figure consequences.
Yeah, I think that's been a challenge in the healthcare sphere for a long time, is how to balance that physician efficiency with security and come up with a way that we can keep the docs happy, but get the security that we need.
Yep.
And the goalposts are moving on compliance, right? So
Yep.
what it took to be HIPAA compliant a few years ago isn't the same thing that it takes anymore. You have to start mandating best practices to continue to meet the same levels of compliance. It's more obvious even in cybersecurity renewals. If you don't have the best practices in place, chances are you're not even going to get cybersecurity insurance next time around. All of these things are changing in real time, year over year.
Yeah, I unfortunately deal with an awful lot of cyber insurance in my position, and the the goalposts moving are being moved the most aggressively by the insurers because they want to minimize their liability.
Yep.
So we see things going from recommendations to impacting your rates to outright mandates where your policy gets rejected very, very quickly. Span of 1 to 2 years. So if you know about a security best practice now, you should be budgeting to execute it within the next 1 to 2 years, no slower. I've beaten the drum about MFA for a very, very long time, but I got an awful lot of traction when insurance policies started rejecting applications if you didn't have MFA on your email or MFA on your VPN. Yeah.
And in some cases, I mean, the fine print on these cyber insurance renewals really matters. In some cases, they've been so aggressive at moving the goalposts that they've moved them right outside the stadium into the gray area of we're not even sure we can technically accomplish what they're saying has to happen. And there are, sometimes we have to phone up and actually have arguments with the insurance carriers over their actual requirements for this particular policy to get things adjusted because the policy itself could not be adhered to. And it's just it's a bit of the Wild West out there, and it's going to be for a little while. And leading us to our last point on this particular slide, nobody's got enough money in healthcare to do everything that they need to do. And the IT function of the facility is just one place asking for more resources in the future, both people and money and all of that. But we have to be a loud voice, and we have to find the right way to communicate to the people that are making these decisions, or the board externally or something, about why the budgets need to be adjusted in the future to accommodate a lot of these moving targets.
Yep. I see we've got about 10 to 15 before we move to questions, James. So let's move fast on the next stuff.
This will be quick. This is a real world example of both a business compromise and sort of a phishing attempt at the same time. So this is a healthcare facility in Nebraska that had a email account that was compromised back during the pandemic, and the bad guys were really targeted here, right? They compromised somebody that was running a pharmacy department, I believe, and then they spammed all of that person's contacts and emails with an email from him with an attachment that was the COVID-19 vaccination program. Right at the moment, this is in end of October in 2020, when that was the hot topic and everybody was looking into that. So it was really, really well put together. and went out to a lot of people in Nebraska. And if you open that, it would ask for your Microsoft credentials, and something that mimicked you have to relog into Outlook or something like that screen, and that would have just sent them directly to the bad guys. So that's something that really happened. Just shows how targeted that is. And this is for Blaine.
Yeah, I added this one. This one is coming around. So from a social engineering aspect, QR codes are attractive, right? You're like, hey, what's behind there? There's a little bit of a mystery. But the thing that may not be considered is uh, they're trying to get you to do something on your phone. So it might take you wherever website it might take you or whatever. Maybe it's a fake login page. Your phone probably does not have near the level of security tooling and protections that your business PC does, especially in a BYOD kind of environment. Your IT department may have almost no visibility into what happens on a phone. The phone might be joined to the guest Wi-Fi even. It's not logged the same way as anything else. So this is more than just the try to get you to click. I'm going to get you to click on a device that isn't being monitored. I don't think I know of any real legitimate business thing where you would get an unsolicited QR code that you should scan. And we had one just yesterday in our own organization. One of our salespersons asked if we should participate in a program, and they shared the QR code to how to get into the program. I said that looks a little bit sketchy. It was legitimately shared during a presentation, so I understand the drive there. Hey, it's really easy for everybody who's attending to take a picture of their screen real quick, but man, you're reinforcing the wrong behaviors.
Yeah, I guess,
Well,
that raises the question, Blaine. I'm a healthcare marketing guy. I talk to marketing folks all the time. Are QR codes something we need to be really cautious of when we're marketing? Should we only use them in print? Should we not use them in web? I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
This is where I think security awareness training is a really big thing, and it's not just for you, but it's also
Sure.
all the people that you're participating with. Everybody needs to do this. This is a rising tide raises all ships kind of situation. I think the biggest thing is it something they were expecting? Is it something they solicited, or did this come out of the blue?
Sure.
And that's the huge difference for all of these kinds of things. It's the same thing with a scam text to your phone or a phone call you're not expecting or anything. It's did I initiate this, or did this get sent to
Sent
me?
to me. Yeah. Yeah, I was at the Missouri Hospital Association conference and picked up one of these, you know. So we do still use QR codes quite a bit, but to your point, am I expecting that QR code? Am I initiating it, or is this something just randomly
Yep.
coming at me?
Yeah.
That's
Did I
great.
walk around that conference and throw my own barcodes everywhere?
Exactly.
Right.
Right. The reality is we're going to see a lot more of this, and it is going to catch a lot of people.
Yeah,
And security awareness training might not have even caught up yet to start leveraging these as examples that people need to look at. One of the reasons to not do security awareness training every now and then, but to be paying for a program, is because they will continue to adopt things like this and continue to re-educate people as they go. But that goes back to business email account compromise, right? Um, it's very easy for marketing people to be targeted in the future, and they start spamming their clients and contacts with stuff that looks like it's a marketing material with a QR code, and invite to an event or something like that, where you go there to get your information, and it's something that's bad. So it's protecting email accounts is number one.
yep.
All right, I'm going to get into, all right, so what happens then? um, we want to go over some examples here of what actually happens if you have a cyber incident that occurs that requires the execution of a cyber insurance policy. I don't know how many people are on this call that sit on executive teams, but when we've been involved in these things in the past, or we've been asked to participate or to consult on it, we find that a lot of people are just learning about what this process looks like at the time that it's happening, during a moment where things are on fire and extremely stressful.
Mhm.
And so we like to include this as educational material. So during at the time, the IT department calls you up and they say, okay, or maybe you're on the call, you're in the IT department, and you got to go tell the president of the company or somebody that hey, systems are unavailable. Looks like we might have encrypted information. We got to find out what to do. Here's all the things that happen simultaneously. So up here, and they're all color coded. So in the blue, this is the business related stuff. First thing that needs to happen is cyber insurance carrier gets notified. So you can get them on the phone and start talking to their legal team about what's happening, and they can get an IR forensics team engaged. All that stuff has to take place at the executive level of the organization, and chances are your cyber insurance policies that tell you what the phone number is for this and what your policy is might be on the IT systems that are now encrypted. So are we putting these things into place so we have easy access to them? Is the incident response plan outside of the system so you even have a good idea of what to do? And you need like the emergency hotline number, because this event will not have occurred on a Tuesday morning. It's going to occur on Friday evening of an extended holiday weekend, where they know that most of the executive team might be out on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
So after that takes place, then you're going to have somebody signing contracts so that so everybody can get started. So it's a simple thing, but who's authorized to sign the contract, especially if the team is unavailable? Who is going to be doing this in the event that there's an emergency? Then also starting at the same time, the IT department, they're represented by green here, has to lock down the environment, because as soon as they notice something, the bad guys are already in place. So the lockdown of the environment has to occur as quickly as possible. Even if you're taken down and encrypted, they could still be using your resources to be communicating with vendors of yours or other places that you interact with. So the lockdown has to take place. And then the business or the hospital has to execute their business continuity plans. This is what are we doing via paper while the system is down? And depending upon the quality of your infrastructure, your DR environment, and your disaster recovery plan, that dictates, past money spent, and past projects dictate how many days or hours you might be down when this thing takes place. So all of these need to be executed. The patients might be in the building and maybe they have to be moved to other facilities, or somebody has to figure out what medications they need and in what dosages they need those medications when the EMR is unavailable. So how are they going to gain access to this? All of it has to be planned in advance to have any chance at being able to smoothly operate during this. And then also at the same time all of this is happening, the IT department needs to start recovering everything from scratch, or at least making plans to do so that you have an option of continuing to run without having to pay off the ransom. And then once they recover, they probably end up, because you don't want to lose a ton of data and restore from 3 months ago before the bad guys got in there. You're restoring to probably as soon as you can before it was encrypted, which means the environment that gets stood back up is the exact same environment that already had the bad guys in it. So once it gets restored, it has to be resecured. So all of these things are happening in tandem, and it's a conversation that's worthwhile for an executive team to consider, so we could start to build a better, more thorough offline incident response plan and business continuity plans that address it, so that things aren't as you have more options available to you in the event that something like this happens.
Yeah. When you think about an incident response plan, should members of the management team like have a copy at their home? Because if you think about what potentially happens, you've got electronic locks in your hospital. You might not be able to get into an office or a building or sections of the building, depending on what happens.
Yeah, I think I even did this. I think I gathered personal emails and sent around a copy. Obviously, they didn't have anything that was too sensitive in it, but
Sure.
Generally, no matter where you are, you have your phone in your
Mhm.
email. I've worked with organizations that they build like DR totes, like tote buckets that they've got
Mhm.
papers and cables and other procedural documents and things in them. I wouldn't be too worried about being locked out of the facility, because a lot of people don't realize that the actual readers on the doors get a copy of, call it like the access profile times people, etc. So even if the centralized controller is down,
Okay.
should still be able to badge in. But it is worth considering. Yeah, and that's the kind of thinking you want to think about is like, can I even literally get into my facility to do my thing?
Yeah, we've had, in one particular case, when I brought up the hospital example with patient dosages and stuff like that for medication, we've worked with their team to script exporting that kind of information from the EMR on a regular basis, and then having that encrypted and then synced up to a separate cloud service, so that they would, somebody would have to put their phone as a hotspot and get a laptop out to it or something, but they'd be able to access that information from somewhere off the facility in the event that they needed it. And then we even have, in that particular case, we have a printer sitting in a closet somewhere, that they would just take the laptop to plug directly into the printer and then start printing things out if they needed to operate right now.
Okay.
And then any of these plans, even if you think, I just am not spending that much time with the cyber incident, or sometimes you'll have doctors, again, I'm not trying to pick on them, but they might think, oh, I'll just retire. It'll be okay. I'll go get a job at a hospital if everything gets lost. But the reality is all of these plans, these incident response plans, they become really useful in everything else that could happen. If LES, loses power for some reason on your block, or if lightning strike fries the wrong piece of equipment, or there's just a variety of things that can happen where these business continuity plans that are designed for a worst case scenario get really, really handy. Or if you're using a cloud-based EHR and the internet goes down, or they have problems on their end, you still have to be able to execute these kind of things, even if you're not doing the actual disaster recovery plan
Sure.
that goes with it.
Yep. It makes sense to have those plans in place at all times.
Yep. So if anybody has questions on those, please bring them to us here shortly. And then I'll just really quickly, this is the Colonial Pipeline design and what the infrastructure they have put together for that. Hopefully everybody on the call remembers the event of the Colonial Pipeline, where they stopped serving all of their customers on the East Coast, and we lost a lot of fuel and power related. So the reason I bring this up, especially in a healthcare context, is the Colonial Pipeline was not actually hacked itself. What was hacked was the invoicing system that was controlled by a third party, I believe. So the fact that they could no longer invoice and bill anybody for their services caused them to decide to shut down operations. So the third party incident triggered them to shut down operations, which is what, of course, made the news and caused a huge issue in the United States. The reason I bring this up in a healthcare context is almost every healthcare place is working with third parties.
Mm-hmm.
It's real common to outsource to a transcriptionist, and maybe it's just a person sitting at home with their own computer. But what they have on their home computer that has nothing to do with your security is all of the transcription reports that they're putting together for your patients. So them getting hacked at home could be a healthcare breach for you. Likewise, there's a lot of places that are outsourcing medical billing. And the security best practices of the medical billing department are hugely important to you, because if the medical billing operation is small and not investing in security appropriately, and they get hacked, then all of your billings and accounts receivable for the last 6 months or so might be held for ransom just through that. And so then you're in the same position, and obviously medical billing information includes PHI and all that kind of stuff too. So everything, all of this stuff is important to think about, and this is just one illustration of that. Anything to add, Andrew or Blaine?
Yeah.
Hopefully it's self-explanatory, but most people don't think about it, and sometimes it's real easy to to outsource to the 2 or 3 people that work from home because they're the least expensive. Then at the same time, their security investments and best practices might not be up to the standards that you really need them to be. And if they're the weak link to you, then there's a good, that's a higher likelihood that they can be targeted for that.
Yeah, and to your point, these third parties, whether it's billing or transcription, they all have access into your EMR. It is definitely a point of failure.
Lane, I'm just going to let you go through this as quickly as you can, and this is our last bit.
Yeah. So I see a lot of IT security focusing on the wrong things because vendors are shiny, salespeople are aggressive, and you're not paying good attention to what your real threats are. What are your most realistic failure scenarios? If you don't understand what you're up against, you're going to spend money in the wrong place. So the reality is, unless you are a very big enterprise, you're not going to stop the majority of attacks. It simply is infeasible in this arms race, right? I tell everybody, you are defending against the commercial hacking group who does this as a job, a literal 9-to-5 job, whose only objective is to make money. And what you want to do is you don't want to be the slowest one out running the bear. If you present a big enough obstacle, they will move on to the next one where they're going to get more return on their investment, right? If China wants to hack you, they will hack you. You do not have the resources to stop with an APT, an advanced persistent threat, right? That's not who you're defending against. So because defense always has to be perfect and attackers only have to succeed once, what you want to do is invest in detecting and containing those incidents as fast as possible. I see way too much money spent on prevention. Like when I said, prevention falls apart the instant like humans get involved.
Right.
So if you don't have a 24/7 third-party security monitoring solution in place, this is not something you can do in-house. It's not something Five9 does in-house. It's a very, very expensive thing to do correctly, and it's very, very affordable relatively to outsource this to somebody else to do it correctly. Do not build this. Don't even pretend to build it. If you are monitoring your own systems, you will not detect the threat actors that are current around today. That's just simply a fact. You won't catch them. I don't care what you're using. You're not going to catch them because they know what you do, and they know how to live off the land and use other techniques to avoid it. So you need somebody good here. And I don't care as long as you get a good one, right? Something here is way better than nothing.
Yep.
And if you need recommendations, we're happy to throw some names out there. But I know a lot of people who implement EDRs like SentinelOne or CrowdStrike or whatever, but they don't pay for the level that has the third party 24/7 SOC who manages and monitors it for you. And that's a mistake. If you're managing your EDR yourself, you're not going to see what you need to see. And you're not going to react in time to an actual incident. The other one here, this is especially important in healthcare. They may be able to hold your systems ransom by encrypting them, but if you've got data backups of everything, you can recover. If you don't have data backups of everything, you might be dead in water. Even if you pay the ransom, there's not 100% guarantee that their decryptor will even work. I've seen that come up. Key database didn't get decrypted correctly.
Or it's infeasible. There's been situations out there where they had a different decryptor key for every single file. So you ended up having, 1 million plus files that were decrypted, and each one has its own key. There's just no way to put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Sure.
Yep. So immutable, a lot of people say offline backups. It doesn't have to be offline. You can replicate to an AWS or a Backblaze or some other service that offers this, where once the data is up there, it literally can't be touched, deleted, altered by you for whatever time period you set, 30 days, something like that.
Okay.
I have seen an organization have their local backups and their offsite backups because they offsited to themselves, so it's part of the same network, have all that encrypted. They saved themselves because they had a copy up in an immutable cloud that they were able to pull down. And this last one, I stole this from another malware researcher because I love the way you phrase this. If you're still running Exchange in-house, don't. Literally indefensible. And there's a word play here. There's two things. One, it's indefensible as in you can't properly secure it. Microsoft is abandoning the product. Like if you just want to put MFA on in-house Exchange, go look at how that's going to actually work. And the second part is it's almost an indefensible position to be in from an administrative. Like you can't argue for on-prem Exchange anymore and have a winning argument. From a security perspective, from a business continuity perspective, from an administrative perspective, Microsoft can and does protect Office 365 far, far better than you can. And when we started seeing Hafnium and all the other related incidents in the last 3 years, it's just all the proof is there. So just don't do it anymore. Once you have all that stuff in the cloud too, some of your business continuity situations get better, right? OneDrive has an inherent backup and file versioning. So if you need to roll back because something got encrypted, you might have that without buying anything extra. And also don't do this yourself. There's a million ways to do an Exchange migration wrong. Find somebody who's done it 100, 200 times because they know all the pitfalls, they'll do it right. I see a lot of Exchange migrations go bad. I think Brian even had one recently. Not to pick on anybody who listened to the call.
Not to pick on anyone at all, but yeah.
So yeah,
It's been a little
find
rough.
somebody who's done it a million times.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other one,
Makes
it's real
total-
common that you might even migrate the mailboxes to Office 365, but you don't really go through the extra work to detach and decommission the on-site exchanges for a while after that. And yeah, it just lingers out there, and it's the most common entry point for the automated attacks. So yeah. And I think with that, we will just skip ahead to if there's any.
Yeah. I think, one of the thoughts is there's a lot there. There's a lot of things to consider. Where do you prioritize? You've got multi-factor, you've got network segmentation, you've got legacy systems maybe running that have to run an old version of Windows. Where do you start? What's your priority? What's the most important place to start?
My most important would be the extremely low-hanging fruit, which is anything that faces the internet can be attacked, right? So I'm concerned about that at a level of about 50 to 1 compared to what's ever happening on your internal network.
Sure.
Because vulnerabilities within your internal network only become a problem when somebody's already got in and then they're looking to move laterally.
Yep.
So everything that faces the internet needs to be well documented, fully patched. If its authentication mechanism supports MFA, it needs to be on that. So let's say you use Citrix. I don't care if you use MFA internally for your Citrix environment, but I want MFA if you are outside coming in over the internet.
Yep.
Because that's what the threat actor is trying to do.
Yeah.
And then the second part then is the detection. The name of the game is to prevent the easy stuff and then be able to respond appropriately when that initial chink in the armor gets pushed through.
Yeah, I'm just going to add from the previous slide that if you have in-house Exchange, step number 1, moving to Office 365 and then enabling multi-factor authentication on it. If your internal backups are joined to your domain, step 1 is to completely reconfigure how your backups are done, because that's typically what we've seen in the worst case scenarios when people are sending us Hail Marys. Yeah. It's because the backups were taken as well. And the backups were taken because they were in the same domain and in the same system, which was a nice, convenient thing for the IT department. But it made it so when the bad guy got in, they had access to everything, including the backups as well. So those have to be done. security awareness training if you're not doing it. These are all low-hanging fruit items. And after like this stuff is done and you've got the basis of some current healthy behaviors that make it easy to go out and get cyber insurance, get the cyber insurance if you don't have it. And then we start to look at threat detection, like Blaine was talking about.
Yeah, and the training for all of your end users is so important. And it's not overly burdensome from an expense perspective. There are fairly simple services out there that will continually train your staff on a regular basis for a pretty low per user per month cost. So, all right. Well, I appreciate all of our attendees today. Thank you, James. Thank you, Blaine. This has been really good. This is being recorded. We'll post it to our website probably in a few days when I have a chance to put it all together. But appreciate your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody.